The billionaire laughed in her face, voice dripping with contempt. "Fix this and I'll give you 100 million. The maid's daughter looked up, smiled softly and solved it in 7 seconds. If this story resonated with you, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. Manhattan, 3:17 a.m. Alexander Voss stood alone on the 87th floor of Voss Tower, the city glittering like broken glass beneath him. The glass walls of his office reflected a man who looked unbreakable. Charcoal suit cut sharper than a blade, silver hair swept back, jaw set like marble. But inside the reflection his eyes were bloodshot, exhausted, terrified. On the holographic screen floating above his desk, red numbers bled across the world map. VossNet, the AI security grid that protected half the planet's financial data, was collapsing. A zero-day exploit no one had ever seen before was eating through the system like acid. In less than 9 hours the markets would open and the damage would be measured in trillions. He had summoned every genius on the payroll. MIT prodigies, ex-NSA cryptographers, 2 former teenage hackers he'd bailed out of prison. They stood in a trembling semicircle, faces pale, mouths dry. None of them could even slow it down. Alexander's fist slammed the desk so hard the glass cracked. "Someone fix this," he whispered, voice raw. "Fix this and I'll give you $100 million. Right now. I don't care who." Silence. Only the soft, relentless ping of the dying system. Down in the service corridors, far beneath the marble and steel, Camila Reyes pushed her cleaning cart past the executive kitchen. 24 years old, hair twisted into a practical knot, uniform 2 sizes too big because it used to belong to her mother. She moved quietly, the way poor people learn to move in rich places, like a ghost who knows she's not supposed to touch anything beautiful. Her mother, Lucia, had cleaned these same floors for 23 years. Lucia's hands were cracked from bleach, her back curved from decades of bending. Every night she came home smelling of lemon polish and told Camila the same thing. "Mija, keep your eyes open. The world is full of puzzles. Someone has to solve them." Camila had always loved puzzles. When she was 7 she'd fixed the broken elevator in their building with a paperclip and prayer. At 12 she rewrote the school's grading software because a teacher had unfairly failed her best friend. At 19 she turned down a full scholarship to Stanford because her mother's kidneys were failing and the dialysis bills were drowning them. Instead she studied at night on a cracked second-hand laptop, teaching herself everything from quantum encryption to ancient Sanskrit just because the patterns calmed her. Tonight the executive floor was supposed to be empty. But the private elevator chimed, and out stumbled Alexander Voss himself, tie loose, eyes wild. He didn't see her at first. He was on the phone, shouting at someone in Tokyo, voice cracking with something close to panic. Camila shrank against the wall, but the cart's wheel squeaked. He spun. "Who the hell are you?" "Cleaning crew, sir," she said, barely above a whisper. "I'll come back later." He stared at her like she was furniture. Then his gaze flicked to the cracked tablet sticking out of her apron pocket, the one covered in stickers of circuit boards and tiny handwritten equations. Something desperate flickered across his face. "You," he said, pointing. "You any good with computers?" Camila's heart thudded. "I fix things sometimes." He laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "Fix this and I'll give you $100 million. He said it like a joke, like a dare, like something he'd regret the second it left his mouth. The hallway lights flickered. Somewhere far above, the AI screamed another warning. Camila looked at him, really looked. She saw the terror under the arrogance, the little boy who'd once built model rockets now watching his empire die. She saw her mother's tired eyes and his sleepless ones. She took one step forward. Up on the 87th floor the prodigies were still frozen. Down in the service corridor the maid's daughter rolled up her sleeves. They hadn't met yet. But the distance between their worlds was about to collapse. Alexander didn't wait for an answer. He grabbed Camila's wrist, his grip too tight, too desperate, and pulled her toward the private elevator. She barely had time to snatch her cracked tablet before the doors sealed them inside. The ride up took 8 seconds. 8 seconds in which the most powerful man in New York realized he was touching the arm of a cleaning girl and didn't let go. 8 seconds in which Camila felt the heat of his hand through her sleeve and understood, with a clarity that made her stomach flip, that this was the moment her life cracked open. 87th floor. Doors slid apart. The war room was chaos wrapped in glass. 20 screens bled red. A dozen geniuses turned as one, mouths open at the sight of their billionaire boss dragging a maid behind him like a lost child. Alexander released her so suddenly she stumbled. "Give her a terminal," he barked. Someone actually laughed, a nervous, dying sound, until Alexander's glare killed it. Camila walked forward slowly, uniform rustling, sneakers silent on the marble. She felt every stare like needles. The air smelled of cold coffee and fear. The main holoscreen showed the kill chain, a polymorphic worm rewriting itself faster than any countermeasure could adapt. The best minds on Earth had been watching it mutate for 6 hours. They were losing by billions with every heartbeat. Camila stopped in front of the screen. Tilted her head. "Can I touch?" she asked, voice small. Alexander gave a sharp nod. Someone shoved a wireless keyboard into her hands. Her fingers moved. Not frantic. Not showy. Come. Like she was typing a grocery list. 7 seconds. Exactly 7. She pressed enter. The red tide on every screen froze, reversed, and then, impossibly, turned green. The worm unraveled itself, line by beautiful line, folding back into harmless nothing. A single line of text appeared in the center of the main display in gentle white. "Good night, little monster." See. Silence. The kind that happens right before the world ends or begins again. Then the room detonated. People shouted, cried, hugged strangers. Someone dropped to their knees. A woman with a Cambridge hoodie started sobbing into her laptop. Alexander Voss did not move. He stared at the screen. At the signature. At the girl in the oversized uniform who was now staring at her own feet, cheeks burning, as if she'd just realized what she'd done in front of the entire world. He took one step toward her. Then another. The crowd parted like water. When he reached her, his voice came out cracked and strange. "You just saved everything." Camila lifted her eyes, dark, enormous, ancient for 24. "I just saw the pattern," she whispered. "It was lonely. It wanted to go home." Alexander's throat worked. He looked like a man watching the sun rise after believing night would last forever. He reached for her hand again, gentler this time, and turned it palm up. Placed something cold and heavy into it. A black credit card with no limit and his personal crest. 100 million, he said hoarsely. As promised. The room went still again. Camila stared at the card like it might bite her. Then she curled his fingers over it, pushing it back into his hand. "I don't want your money, Mr. Voss." Her voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the glass room. "I want you to look at me. Really look. Not at the uniform. Not at the cart downstairs. At me." Alexander's breath hitched. For the first time in 30 years, someone had refused his money and asked for something harder. He looked. And in the silence between them, with the green glow of a saved world bathing them both, something ancient and impossible stirred awake. She was the first person who had ever seen him terrified and hadn't looked away. He was the first person who had ever seen her brilliance and hadn't tried to own it. Neither of them moved. Neither of them breathed. The worm was dead. But something far more dangerous had just been born. The green glow on the screens faded to standby blue. The geniuses started clapping each other on the back, already rewriting history in their heads. We contained it, we collaborated, we were heroes. Phones came out. Champagne appeared from nowhere. Someone cued triumphant music. Alexander didn't hear any of it. He was still holding Camila's hand, the black card crushed between their palms like contraband. Her skin was warm, calloused from years of gripping mop handles and cracked keyboards. He couldn't let go. If he let go, the moment might vanish and prove it had all been a hallucination brought on by terror and sleep deprivation. Camila pulled first. Gently but unmistakably. "I should get back to my cart," she said, eyes on the marble floor. "My shift ends at 6. The sentence landed like a slap. Alexander dropped the card into his pocket as if it burned. "You're not going anywhere." The room quieted again. 20 pairs of eyes flicked between the billionaire and the maid. Camila's shoulders rose and fell in one slow breath. When she looked up, her gaze was steady, almost pitying. "Mr. Voss, you don't owe me anything. The system is safe. That's enough." She stepped back. One step. Two. Alexander felt panic rising, sharp and unfamiliar. "You just saved the global economy in 7 seconds and you want to go push a cleaning cart?" A muscle jumped in her cheek. "It's my mother's route. She's on dialysis tomorrow. Someone has to cover." The words were simple but they gutted him. He saw it all in a flash. Cracked linoleum apartments, overdue medical bills, a daughter who turned down Stanford to keep her mother alive. While he had been buying islands, she had been choosing between groceries and insulin. He opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time in his adult life, Alexander Voss had no idea what to say. Camila gave him a small, polite nod, the same nod she gave security guards and receptionists every night, and turned toward the elevator. He moved without thinking, blocking her path. At least let me. Let you what? Her voice stayed soft, but steel lived underneath. Write a check? Put me in a glass office? Turn me into your pet genius so you can feel better about the world? She shook her head. I'm not a charity case, Mr. Voss. And I'm not for sale. She stepped around him. This time he let her. The elevator doors closed on her tired, beautiful face. Alexander stood frozen until the champagne music felt obscene. Then he actually roared at the room. Everybody out. Now. They scattered like startled birds. He was alone with the quiet blue screens and the ghost of her warmth in his palm. Down in the service corridor, Camilla retrieved her cart with shaking hands. She pressed her forehead to the cool metal handle and let out one ragged breath that sounded dangerously close to a sob. She had just turned down $100 million. She had just looked the most powerful man alive in the eye and walked away. And she had absolutely no idea why the thought of never seeing him again felt like drowning. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. Mija, did you eat? I saved you tamales. Camilla stared at the screen until the words blurred. Upstairs, Alexander poured 3 fingers of scotch he didn't drink. He opened the banking app on his phone, typed in 100 million, hovered over her name, he didn't even know her full name, then hurled the phone across the room. It shattered against the glass wall. He wasn't angry at her. He was furious at himself for the way his chest had cracked open the second she said, I want you to look at me. He had spent 48 years making sure no one ever saw him. Not really. And in one night, a girl in a borrowed uniform had seen everything. Alexander sank into his chair, buried his face in his hands and whispered to the empty room, what the hell is happening to me? Camilla wheeled her cart into the executive bathroom, locked the door and finally let the tears come. Not for the money. Not even for her mother. For the way Alexander Voss had looked at her when the screens turned green, like she was the first real thing he'd touched in decades. She hated how much she wanted to be seen again. Neither of them slept. Morning crept over Manhattan, pink and indifferent. They were 3 floors and a lifetime apart, both pretending the other didn't exist. Both failing. 7:42 a.m. The city was barely awake when the sky turned white. A freak atmospheric river, born somewhere over the Atlantic and fed by a late-season hurricane, slammed into the northeast with biblical force. Wind howled at 110 miles per hour. Rain fell sideways. Every airport shut. Every bridge closed. The National Weather Service used the word catastrophic before most people had finished their first coffee. Voss Tower's emergency shutters descended automatically, sealing the building like a vault. Power flickered, then steadied on backup generators. The 87th floor became an island above a drowned city. Alexander stood at the window watching water stream down the glass in solid sheets. The streets below had vanished. Only the tops of yellow cabs floated like toys in a bathtub. He hadn't changed clothes. His eyes were red, his jaw shadowed with silver stubble. He looked like a man who had lost a war with himself and was waiting for the surrender papers. His phone buzzed with an internal alert. Security, all non-essential personnel evacuated at 5:30. One employee remains on premises. Cleaning ID 4729C. Location, subbasement laundry level. Refused to leave mother's route unfinished. Alexander stared at the message until the letters blurred. Camilla. He was moving before he made the conscious choice. Private elevator, key card, override codes. Down, down, down into the humming belly of the building. The laundry level smelled of industrial detergent and wet concrete. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Rows of commercial washers churned like sleeping beasts. He found her in the far corner, folding white towels with mechanical precision. Her back was to him. Hair damp from the steam, uniform sleeves rolled high, revealing thin white scars on her forearms, old burns from a childhood accident with a hot iron he would learn later. She sensed him anyway. Froze. Didn't turn. You shouldn't be down here, she said to the towels. Neither should you. The city's underwater. I noticed. Her voice was flat, exhausted. My mother's dialysis center closed. No buses. No trains. She's safe at home with the neighbor, but, she trailed off, folded another towel with a snap. I'm stuck until it clears. Figured I'd finish the linens. Alexander took one step closer. You're telling me you chose folding towels over the penthouse suite I offered you at 3 a.m.? She finally faced him. Eyes swollen from crying or lack of sleep, he couldn't tell which. I don't want your suite, Mr. Voss. I don't want anything that comes with strings. He flinched as if she'd struck him. Silence stretched, filled only by the rhythmic thump of the dryers. Then the lights flickered hard. A low groan rolled through the building. Somewhere far above, glass shattered in the wind. Alexander's phone buzzed again. Structural alert, 87th floor observation deck compromised. All personnel remain below 60th floor until further notice. He looked at Camila. She looked back. They were trapped. 40 floors underground, in a windowless laundry room, with nothing but industrial soap and a lifetime of defenses between them. Camila exhaled through her nose. There's a break room. Catch. Coffee that tastes like battery acid. You'll live. She walked past him without touching. He followed because there was nowhere else to go. The break room was tiny, vending machines, one sagging couch, a table with 3 mismatched chairs. A small TV bolted to the wall played the weather on loop, red banners, flooded subways, the mayor begging people to stay inside. Camila poured 2 cups of the terrible coffee. Handed him one without asking if he wanted it. Alexander wrapped both hands around the chipped mug like it was the only warm thing left in the world. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, knees almost touching, pretending to watch the storm. Minutes bled into an hour. Finally Camila spoke so quietly he almost missed it. Why does it bother you so much that I don't want your money? Alexander stared into the black surface of his coffee. Because it's the only thing I've ever been good at giving. She turned to him then, really turned, and for the first time the armor cracked on both sides. Outside the storm screamed. Inside, 2 people who had spent their lives invisible to each other began, against every instinct to be seen. The television flickered to static, then to an emergency tone. Power dipped again, the overhead fluorescence dimmed to a sickly amber. Somewhere deep in the building, a generator coughed but held. Camila set her empty cup on the table. The silence that followed was heavier than any conversation they'd had so far. Alexander spoke first, voice rough from disuse. Tell me why you really turned down Stanford. She laughed once, short, bitter, surprised he even knew. You ran a background check in the last 4 hours? I ran it the second the elevator doors closed on you, he admitted without shame. I needed to understand how someone who can kill a polymorphic worm in 7 seconds ends up folding towels at 4 a.m. Camila pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them like armor. My mom's kidneys started failing the week I got the acceptance letter. Full ride, housing, everything. But the waiting list for transplants in this country is a death sentence if you're poor. So I deferred. Then deferred again. Then the money ran out anyway. She shrugged, a motion that tried to be casual and failed. Turns out brilliance doesn't pay dialysis bills. Alexander's jaw flexed. You could have taken the 100 million last night and bought her 10 kidneys. I could have, she said quietly. But then I'd have to look her in the eye every day knowing I sold the only thing that's ever been mine, my mind, to a man who laughed when he offered it. The words landed between them like a live wire. He swallowed hard. I wasn't laughing at you. I know, she whispered. You were laughing so you wouldn't beg. The truth of it stunned them both. Alexander set his own cup down and reached into his inside jacket pocket. He pulled out a small, worn leather wallet, not the kind that held black cards, but an old, soft thing he'd carried since college. From it he drew a photograph, edges frayed, colors faded. A little boy, maybe 7, with Alexander's gray eyes and a gap-toothed grin, stood next to a dark-haired woman whose smile could stop traffic. They were on a beach at sunset, the boy holding a cheap plastic rocket. This is Julian, he said, voice barely audible. And Sophia. Camila took the photo with careful fingers as if it might disintegrate. Alexander stared at the far wall, seeing something far beyond it. 22 years ago I was still nobody. Just a kid with a laptop and a dream of secure networks. Sophia believed in me when I had nothing. Julian, he thought I hung the moon. His throat worked. I was in Shenzhen closing the first big funding round when the car accident happened. Black ice on the sawmill. They told me on the runway. I didn't even make it back for the funerals. Camila's breath caught. I buried them in Westchester, he continued. Then I buried myself in work. Built everything you see upstairs on the promise that if I just made enough money, the hole would fill. He gave a broken laugh. Turns out money is an excellent shovel. It just keeps digging. He finally looked at her. Last night, when the system was dying and I thought I'd lose the only thing I had left, I felt that same helplessness. And then you walked in wearing your mother's uniform and fixed it like it was nothing. For 1 second I wasn't the man who let his family die chasing a dream. I was just seen. A tear slipped down Camila's cheek. She didn't wipe it away. She reached into her own pocket and pulled out a tiny, tarnished silver bracelet, child-sized, engraved with a single word, valiente. My father gave me this the day he left, she said. I was 6. He promised he'd come back when he had enough money to give us a better life. He sent postcards for a year. Then nothing. Mom still sets a plate for him on Christmas. She turned the bracelet so the inscription caught the dim light. I stopped believing in promises a long time ago. But I never stopped believing in fixing things. Because if I can fix enough broken things, maybe one day I'll be enough to make someone stay. Alexander stared at the bracelet, then at her, like the pieces of a puzzle he'd never known existed were clicking into place. Outside, thunder rolled so hard the floor vibrated. Inside, the last walls came down. Camilla's voice cracked. I'm terrified, Alexander. Terrified that if I let you in, one day you'll decide I'm just the maid's daughter who got lucky once. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to prove I'm more. He moved then, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and took the bracelet from her trembling fingers. He slipped it onto his own wrist, where it hung loose and ridiculous against his Rolex. Then let me spend the rest of mine proving you never have to, he said. For the first time in 22 years, Alexander Voss cried without hiding it. Camilla crawled across the couch and curled into his side, small and shaking. He wrapped his arms around her like she was the only real thing he'd touched since the world took his son away. They stayed like that while the storm tried to tear the city apart above them, trading pieces of their broken pasts and whispers, each confession stitching something new and fragile between them. Neither said, I love you, yet. But the possibility filled the little room like oxygen after drowning. The storm eased sometime after midnight. The howling dropped to a low moan, then to the soft hush of endless rain. The lights steadied. The generators purred like satisfied cats. But neither of them moved from the sagging couch. Camilla's head rested against Alexander's chest. His heartbeat was steady now, no longer the frantic drum it had been 12 hours earlier. His arm was around her shoulders, thumb tracing slow, mindless circles on the sleeve of her uniform. The silver bracelet Valiente bracelet glinted on his wrist every time he moved. They had talked themselves raw. Childhoods, failures, favorite songs, worst fears, the way grief sits in the body like a stone. There had been tears, yes, but also laughter, startled, rusty laughter. When Camilla admitted she once hacked the building's HVAC to blast Christmas music in July just to make her mom smile on a bad day, and Alexander confessed he still couldn't fold a fitted sheet and had a housekeeper who did it for $200 a pop. Now the words had slowed to something gentler. Camilla tilted her face up. Tell me something true that you've never told anyone. Alexander thought for a long time. Then he reached into his shirt and unclasped a thin gold chain. On it hung a tiny, battered rocket charm, plastic, painted blue, one fin missing. Julian made this in first grade, he said. I've worn it every single day since the funeral. Even in the shower. Even when I accepted Time's Man of the Year award. No one knows. His voice dropped. I was ashamed. Billionaires aren't supposed to need plastic rockets. Camilla took the charm between careful fingers, turned it over. On the bottom, scratched with childish letters, Daddy equals hero. Her eyes filled again. She pressed the rocket to her lips, then gently tucked it back inside his shirt, right over his heart. Your turn, he whispered. She hesitated, then pulled out her phone, the cracked one with the circuit board stickers. She opened a hidden folder and showed him a single photo. Lucia, thin and smiling in a hospital gown, holding a hand-drawn card that read World's Best Genius M.O.M. Beneath it, in Camilla's handwriting. One day I'll buy you a house with a garden and you'll never be tired again. I update the date on this promise every year, she said. I was going to cash your $100 million and finally keep it. But I was scared the price would be me. Alexander closed his hand over hers on the screen. The promise is still yours to keep. And the only price is letting me stand next to you while you do it. Something loosened in her chest, something that had been knotted since she was 6 years old and watched her father walk away. She laughed through tears. You're really bad at being a billionaire, you know that? He grinned, the first real, unguarded grin of his adult life. I'm retiring from that job effective immediately. New title, Camilla's personal coffee maker and hype man. She snorted. You can't even work the break room machine. Teach me. So she did. They stood side by side at the ancient coffee station while the rain softened outside. She showed him how to coax the machine into not producing tar. He burned his thumb and swore creatively. She kissed the burn better without thinking. He froze, stunned by how natural it felt. They carried fresh-ish cups back to the couch. Steam curled between them. Camilla tucked her legs beneath her. What happens when the storm ends, Alexander? He didn't hesitate. Whatever you want. You walk out of here and never see me again, I'll still make sure your mother has the best care on the planet and you have every resource you could ever need, no strings, no contact. Or, he took a breath that shook. Or you let me court you properly. Slowly. Publicly. Privately. However you need. I will spend every day proving I'm not buying you, I'm choosing you. Camila studied his face, the new lines around his eyes from smiling, the way his hair had dried in soft silver waves, the rocket charm resting against his throat. She reached up and touched his cheek. I choose door number 2. But I have conditions. Name them. First dates happen in normal places. Diners. Movie theaters that smell like popcorn butter. No private jets. He laughed softly. Done. Second, you meet my mother as Alexander, not Mr. Voss. She'll probably feed you until you can't breathe. I will gain 20 pounds happily. Third, her voice dropped. You let me keep saving the world in my own way. I don't want to be your trophy genius. I want to build things that matter. Alexander turned his hand palm up on his knee. She placed hers in it. Camila Reyes, he said, solemn as a vow, I will build you whatever lab you want. And then I will sit in the corner and watch you outshine me every single day. She leaned in until their foreheads touched. Outside, the rain had become a lullaby. Inside, 2 broken people discovered that some fractures, when they heal, leave the bone stronger than before. Camila whispered against his lips, I think I'm ready to be seen for the rest of my life. Alexander answered by kissing her, slow, reverent, tasting of terrible coffee and second chances. The storm was over. The real one had just begun and it felt like flying. Dawn came gray and exhausted. The rain had stopped but the city was still paralyzed. Voss Tower's emergency shutters began to rise floor by floor, letting in weak, watery light. Alexander and Camila had dozed on the couch, tangled together like survivors of a shipwreck. When the building's PA crackled to life with the all clear, they woke slowly, foreheads still touching, sharing the same quiet smile. Then the private elevator chimed. 4 people stepped out, Alexander's chief of staff, 2 board members in rumpled suits, and a crisis PR woman clutching an iPad like a shield. They took one look at the billionaire in yesterday's shirt, silver hair mussed, arm around a woman in a cleaning uniform and froze. The chief of staff recovered first. Sir, we've been trying to reach you for 12 hours. The press is feral. The worm story leaked, someone on the dev team sold footage of last night. Every network is running the same clip. You dragging a maid into the war room, her fixing the unfixable, you handing her a black card. They're calling her Cinderella Coder. They're calling you everything from hero to predator. Alexander stood, instinctively moving in front of Camila. Turn it off. All of it. Too late, the PR woman said tightly. There's a worse problem. Someone dug into her background. Old juvenile records, sealed but not sealed enough. At 15 she hacked a pharmaceutical company that denied her mother an experimental drug. Cost them 8 figures. The headline writes itself, Billionaire Voss saved by teenage felon. Camila went very still. One board member, a hawk-faced man named Langford, spoke for the first time. Alexander, the stock opens in 90 minutes. If you're seen with her, the narrative becomes, disgraced CEO sleeps with the help who blackmailed him. We need distance. Immediately. Alexander's voice turned to ice. Get out. Langford didn't blink. We can spin this. Quiet settlement. Generous. She disappears with enough money to vanish comfortably. You make a statement about gratitude and privacy. We survive. Camila stood up slowly. The silver bracelet glinted on Alexander's wrist like an accusation. She looked at the strangers, then at Alexander. Tell them I'm already gone, she said quietly. It's easier. No, the word cracked like a gunshot. But the PR woman was already holding out an NDA and a check with a lot of zeros. Camila stared at it. Something inside her, the part that had learned early never to trust kindness from powerful men, curled up and died. She turned to Alexander. You promised me slow. Normal. No strings. Her voice shook. But the second the world looks at us, I become a liability you have to pay off. Alexander took a step toward her. Camila. Don't. She backed away. I was stupid to think the man who builds walls around entire networks would ever let the world see someone like me standing next to him. Langford moved forward with the check. Camila stared at it like it was poison. Alexander snatched it, tore it in half, then again until confetti fluttered to the floor. Anyone who touches her speaks to me first, he snarled at his team. Anyone who leaks another word about her answers to me personally. Get out. They hesitated. He took one menacing step. They fled. The elevator doors closed. Silence. Camila's eyes filled. You just chose me over your empire. I chose you the second you refused my money, he said hoarsely. But I didn't know the cost would be this public. I didn't know how ugly it would get. She wrapped her arms around herself. I can't be the reason you lose everything you built for Julian and Sophia. And I can't lose you, he said, voice breaking. Not when I just found you. But the damage was done. The television in the corner, still on, volume low, cut to a live feed outside the tower. A mob of reporters. Phones raised. Someone had found Lucia's apartment building. A churn crawled across the screen. Mother of Cinderella coder refuses comment, fears deportation. Camila made a sound like she'd been punched. She grabbed her cracked phone, hands shaking so hard she dropped it twice. Mom isn't even, she couldn't finish. Alexander reached for her. She flinched. I need to go, she whispered. Before they hurt her to get to me. To us. Camila, please. She was already moving, grabbing her mother's old cleaning badge, heading for the service stairs because the elevators would be crawling with cameras now. Alexander followed. Let me fix this. You can't fix this, she shouted, whirling on him. Tears streamed down her face. You can't buy them off, you can't code them away. I am always going to be the maid's daughter who doesn't belong in your world. She ran. He chased her down 4 flights before his lungs gave out. By the time he reached the sub-basement, the heavy fire door was slamming shut behind her. He slammed his fist against it until his knuckles bled. On the other side, Camila sank to the wet concrete, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. They were 3 floors apart again. This time it felt permanent. Alexander did not go back upstairs. He stayed in the sub-basement corridor, back pressed to the cold cinderblock wall, staring at the fire door Camila had disappeared through. The building hummed around him, generators, distant voices, the slow drip of water from a broken sprinkler. But inside his chest there was only a ringing silence. His phone vibrated itself to death in his pocket. He ignored it. After 20 minutes, he slid down the wall until he sat on the dirty floor, knees up, suit ruined, silver hair falling into his eyes. He looked like a man who had lost everything twice in one lifetime. He pulled out the torn halves of the settlement check and stared at them until the numbers blurred. Then he took out the rocket charm necklace, pressed it to his lips, and finally let himself ask the question he had never dared ask after the accident. What would Julian think of the man I became? The answer came fast and merciless. He'd be ashamed. Alexander closed his fist around the plastic and gold until it cut. Then he stood up, wiped his face with the sleeve of a $20,000 jacket, and made a decision. He walked, not ran, to the security control room 2 levels up. The guards leapt to attention when the billionaire appeared looking like a shipwreck survivor. Give me every camera feed from the last 30 minutes. Every exit. Every street corner. And kill the live stream to the press pool. All of it. Sir, the board. Do it or find new jobs by sunset. Screens flickered. Dozens of angles. He found her almost immediately. Camila was on the loading dock C, soaked to the skin, trying to flag down one of the last National Guard trucks leaving the flood zone. A reporter had already spotted her. A drone buzzed overhead. She looked tiny, hunted, heartbreakingly brave. Alexander felt his heart split cleanly in 2. He turned to the head of security. Clear the lobby. Clear the plaza. I want 0 cameras, 0 drones, 0 people between me and that dock in the next 4 minutes. The man hesitated only a second, then started barking orders. Alexander took the service elevator alone. Meanwhile, 3 miles away in a cramped apartment in Washington Heights, Lucia Reyes watched the news with the sound off, clutching her rosary so hard the beads left marks. The screen showed her daughter running from Voss Tower, hair plastered to her face, chased by shouting men with microphones. Lucia whispered, Mija, what did you do? Her phone rang, unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Then she saw the area code and picked up. Mrs. Reyes? Alexander's voice, hoarse, shaking. This is Alexander Voss. I need your help. A long pause. Lucia had spent 23 years hating everything his name represented. But she heard the break in his voice and recognized it. She'd heard it in her own the day Camila's father disappeared. Speak, Mijo, she said softly. I love your daughter, he said, the words raw and brand new in his mouth. And I just hurt her worse than anyone ever has. I don't know how to fix it without making it worse. But I'm going to try. I need you to trust me for 5 minutes. Lucia closed her eyes. If you hurt her again, I will find you. Money or no money. I know. She took a breath. Then go get my girl. And tell her her mother is proud. Always. Alexander hung up, stepped out of the elevator into the deserted lobby, and walked straight into the rain. The plaza had been cleared, miraculously, professionally. Only one drone still hovered, but a security sniper took it out with an EMP dart before it could transmit. Camila stood under the awning of the loading dock, arms wrapped around herself, watching the truck disappear into flooded streets. She didn't hear him approach until his shadow fell over her. She turned, eyes swollen, chin high. I told you to let me go. I heard you, he said. Rain soaked his shirt in seconds. I'm not here to stop you. I'm here to choose. He dropped to one knee, right there in the puddle, in the ruined Armani, in front of the whole watching world that wasn't watching anymore because he'd killed every feed. He held out both hands empty. I'm not offering money. I'm not offering protection. I'm not offering anything except me, broken, terrified, 48 years old and just learning how to be human. If you walk away right now, I will spend the rest of my life making sure no one ever hurts you or your mother again. And I will never bother you. He swallowed. But if you stay, if you let me stand up and take your hand, I will spend the rest of my life proving that love isn't a transaction. I will burn the empire to the ground before I let it touch you. I choose you, Camila Reyes. Not the genius. Not the savior. You. Thunder rolled, softer now, almost approving. Camila stared at him, kneeling, trembling, more vulnerable than any man she had ever seen. Her voice came out small, cracked. You'll lose everything. I already did, he said. 22 years ago. I just didn't know I could get it back until last night. A sob escaped her. She looked at the sky, at the clearing clouds, at the man offering her the only thing he had left. Himself. Then Camila Reyes, Maid's daughter, secret genius, keeper of broken promises, did the bravest thing she had ever done. She reached down and took his wet, shaking hand. Get up, Alexander, she whispered. We're going home. 3 months later. Late February golden hour. The garden smelled of wet earth and orange blossoms. Lucia's new house, a modest 2-story in Riverdale with a wraparound porch and raised beds already bursting with tomatoes, glowed in the low sun. A hand-painted sign above the mailbox read, Casa Reyes Vos. Because Lucia had insisted, and neither of them had the heart to argue with her. Inside the kitchen was chaos and music. Salsa poured from an old radio. Lucia, cheeks round again, hair twisted up with a pencil, stirred a pot of mole so rich the scent alone could make a grown man cry. Camila, barefoot in jeans and one of Alexander's stolen MIT hoodies, chopped onions with terrifying speed. Alexander, apron that said kiss the cook, sleeves rolled, silver hair tied back with a rubber band, was on tamale duty and failing gloriously. Like this, Mijo, Lucia scolded, taking the corn husk from his hands. You're murdering my grandmother. Alexander grinned, unrepentant. I'm an engineer, not a tortilla whisperer. Camila hip-checked him. You said the same thing about the coffee machine and now you're addicted. He stole a kiss before Lucia could swat him with a spoon. I'm addicted to the teacher. Lucia rolled her eyes so hard the whole block probably heard it, but she was smiling too wide to hide. Outside the garden gate creaked. Guests began to arrive. Camila's childhood friends from the building, a few of the Voss Tower night cleaners who had become day-shift engineers, even 2 of the original geniuses from that frantic night, now working for Camila's new non-profit lab instead of Alexander's empire. Alexander had done exactly what he promised. He burned the parts that needed burning. He stepped down as CEO. Sold 40% of his shares to a worker-led trust. Turned the top 6 floors of Voss Tower into the Reyes Institute for Accessible Cybersecurity, open source, free tuition, priority admission for kids who grew up on food stamps. The press called it the most expensive act of love in history. Alexander called it the cheapest. The board screamed. The stock dipped. Then climbed higher than ever when the world saw what Camila could really do when she wasn't hiding. Tonight was the Institute's official opening, but the party was here in Lucia's garden, because Camila had only one condition for the rest of her life. Family first, always. The sun slipped lower. Paper lanterns flickered on, strung between lemon trees. Someone handed Alexander a guitar he definitely didn't know how to play. He strummed 3 terrible chords anyway while Camila laughed so hard she had to sit on the porch steps. Lucia clapped her hands. Basta. Food before romance. Everyone migrated to the long tables under the lanterns. Platters appeared. Mole, tamales, arroz con gandals, tres leches cake big enough to baptize a small child. Children chased each other between chairs. Someone started a conga line. Alexander found Camilla's hand under the table and squeezed once. She squeezed back. Later, when plates were empty and stars crowded the sky, Lucia stood on a chair, wine glass raised, and the garden quieted. "I have something to say," she announced. 24 years ago I cleaned toilets so my daughter could dream. Tonight she dreams for the world. And this man," she pointed spoon at Alexander, "this man learned that love is not a check you write. It is the mornings you burn the eggs, the nights you sit in hospital waiting rooms, the days you choose the same person over and over even when it's hard." She looked at Camilla, eyes shining. "Mija, you were always enough. Now you get to be happy too." Camilla stood, tears already falling, and hugged her mother so hard they both almost toppled off the chair. Alexander waited until the cheers died down, then pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Not black, not flashy, just simple blue. He didn't kneel this time. He stayed standing because they were equals now. He opened the box. Inside was the silver Valiente bracelet, cleaned and resized, next to a plain white gold band etched with tiny rockets and circuit traces. "Camila Sofia Reyes," he said, voice carrying in the sudden hush, "I have loved you since the moment you refused my money and asked me to see you. I will love you on the days the code works and the days it breaks, on the days the headlines are kind and the days they lie. Marry me not because I can give you the world, but because I want to build a better one with you, one garden, one tamale, one sunrise at a time." Camila stared at him, then at the ring, then at the people who had become their chosen family. She laughed through tears. "Yes," she said. "But only if you promise to keep burning the tamales forever." He slipped the ring on her finger. The garden exploded, clapping, whistling, someone set off leftover fireworks from New Year's. Lucia sobbed happily into a dish towel. Much later, when the guest had gone home and Lucia was asleep in her new rocking chair, Alexander and Camilla stood barefoot in the grass still damp from last winter's storms. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, chin on her head. "Remember the first words you ever said to me?" he murmured. She smiled into the dark. "I should get back to my cart." He turned her gently, brushed a thumb across her cheek. "Stay." She rose on tiptoe and kissed him, soft, certain. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered. "Not ever again." Above them, the stars looked close enough to touch. Below them, the city, scarred, flooded, rebuilt, glittered like it had the night everything almost ended. And in a garden that smelled of orange blossoms and second chances, the maid's daughter and the man who learned how to be human held each other under the quiet sky, finally, perfectly home. They had fixed the unfixable. Not just a system. Each other. Love at last. Unexpected. Hard one. Forever. If this ever made you tear up, smile, or believe again even for a second, drop a heart in the comments and tell me your favorite moment. And if you could have one impossible thing fixed in 7 seconds, what would it be? Thank you for letting me tell their story.